Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Heartbound Editing podcast. I am Rebecca and I am the developmental editor behind Heartbound Editing. It is my goal to help authors take any great manuscript and make it as best as it can possibly be. Today's guest is Isla Elrick, the author of Daughter of the Moon, and it is the first book in the Guardians of the Fae Gates series, which launched very recently. Hi,
Hi.
Isla.
Hello.
I am so glad to have this chance to chat with you today about your story, your inspirations, your processes around it, and what you're doing with it now. To start off, why don't you tell us a little bit about Daughter of the Moon?
Okay, so Daughter of the Moon is I would say, a romantic fantasy. It takes place in far future Ireland. The main character, Maeve, has lived in a tribe her whole life. Um, and she knows of the empire at the borderlands of her tribe, the Aquelan Empire. But she's never quite come face to face with them until the beginning of this book, where they conquer her village and start building a fort there on the borderlands. Um, she's trying to escape, trying to find a way to help her people. And in the process, she runs into the woods and finds a fawn there who's like, "Oh, well, let me tell you, you are actually the reincarnation of a Fae princess." And she's like, "Well, I don't know if he's telling the truth, but it's the only shot I have, so maybe the Fae can help me." And it just goes from there. The uh the tropes, I guess I would say, are uh a reincarnated soulmates. So if you like fated mates, soulmates, uh I've been searching for you for 1,000 years, like that kind of thing, that's definitely right up your alley. um I would say it's sort of in that like throne of glass, blood and ash thing, where it's like lots of epic battles and stuff like that. Um and yeah, I'm
Very
so bad at elevator pitches, so I hope that was okay.
That was great. Yeah, and I loved reading it, and I'll get more into some of my takes on it later in the episode. So I know you have other books in this genre or in similar genres, including the Everwinter series, which I loved and have on my stack here behind me. What drew you to this genre or these tropes or this sort of corner of the writing world?
Well, I mean, I guess the fact that I've always been really into fantasy, like specifically, like I do like Lord of the Rings and stuff like that, but I really like sword and sorcery fantasy, where you're not necessarily saving the world, you're just like on a quest. I think that's really fun. Um and I think that with the far future stuff, there's just so much opportunity to mix in other genres, like post-apocalyptic, and just things about those genres that I really like, without having to do like a hard like sci-fi approach to it, if that makes sense. So I also just really like the community of this genre. Everyone is just so into each other. Like everyone is everyone else's hype man, and I just really like that. Whereas some other genres can get really competitive or even like mean. I just really like that fantasy romance is just a bunch of nerds hanging out.
Absolutely. And I personally love the world building that you've done with the
Thank
far
you.
future, with the fantasy. You integrate it so beautifully. It's so much fun.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, I agree. Like the community in the sort of fantasy romance space is really mutually encouraging, and I absolutely adore that. So I know you've published 7 books under this pen name and 3 more under another. How would you describe sort of how your inspirations or interests or goals have shifted between that first book you ever wrote and where you are now with this 10th?
Oh man. Well, I guess I started out, like, I always knew that I wanted to be an author, but I started out really getting serious about publishing. because, well, to make money, honestly. But I realized through writing the first book I ever wrote, under a different pen name, that I I'm like not built for that. Like, if I'm just like, oh, I'm just gonna like write whatever and make $1 million, like I can't write to I can't just write because I want to make money. I have to like do the things that I love. So it always becomes much deeper than I meant for it to. So like I was like in I think 2016 is when I started writing Everwinter. I was like, I'm gonna write some dragon porn and make $1 million. And then in 2020, when it turned out I really needed that dragon porn, it became so much deeper and so much more personal. Um, so honestly, really, when it comes to why I chose this genre, why I choose to write, it's because I have to, honestly. Like, and fantasy, any speculative fiction is so important to me and my process of just how I work through trauma and the things that are going on around me in the world and stuff like that. So, yeah,
Very cool. I also totally get it.
I
So,
know.
yeah.
You and me are like,
Yeah. It's been a delight getting to know you, and it's so nice having another author in my area that we can like actually meet up for lunch and stuff. That's
yeah.
been so much fun. So, talk us through your process a little bit. Are you a plotter or a pantser? And how do you think that that impacts the final product that you end up with?
Um, well, I would like to say that I'm a plotter, and I've definitely tried to plot, but the truth is that I think a little too chaotic to plot to the level that others do, or maybe even the level that I should. So usually I have a vague idea of the arc, but everything will change in like 3 chapters in, and I'm like, okay, well, now I have to rework the middle part and stuff like that. So I guess I would say I'm a plantser of both.
Cool.
So like I let the characters do what they want to do. They're not like chained to the plot, but I wouldn't say that I'm a pantser either. I don't just sit down and start writing.
Fair. So, what is the drafting process typically like for you?
Um, well, it's a lot of I try to do that like just get a first draft out type thing. But my thing is that I have ADHD, so a lot of times what I do is I hyper focus and then completely lose interest for like 2 months. So I have to come back, read what I wrote to remember what was going on, and then continue to write the book. So a lot of times drafting is, well, very chaotic. Um, I take a lot of breaks, and there's always that point 75% into the book where you're like, this sucks and I hate this.
Oh
I The first book I ever wrote, or maybe the second, I can't remember. I noticed that that was happening, and I went to my mom, who's also a writer, and I was like, I think this is really bad, and she was like, no, it's just part of the process. Like, you'll get used to it. And lo and behold, like 9 books in, yes, that is part of the process. There's a point at which I'm just like, this is the worst thing anyone has ever written. And you just have to push through it.
well, I'm glad you had the voice of wisdom to reassure you on
Yeah.
that. So, the part that I'm most interested in as a writer myself and as a developmental editor is the revision process. And I
Mm.
know that you are a developmental editor as well, although from our other chats, I think we have very different styles around that, which is very cool. Um, so, what is your revision process on your books typically like? And do you feel like your experience developmentally editing other people's work has influenced how you do that on your own?
Mm. Um, I can't remember who said it, but there was an author who worked as an editor for a long time, and he said, I learned more from reading the things in the rejection pile than I ever learned from reading actual published books. And that's so true. I feel like sometimes you don't know what the right thing to do is. And the way my brain works, I'm very focused on doing the right thing the right way. Um, and when I don't know what the right thing to do is, sometimes it helps to look at something and be like, oh, well, that's definitely not it. so, so I think editing people has definitely made me a better writer. And then also when it comes to my editing process, I'm not a very like sentimental or precious person when it comes to um, killing my darlings. So a lot of times I'll put on my editor hat while I'm reading my first draft and be like, this has to go. That has to go. That's stupid. Why did I write that? For instance, there was this part, and this is no shade to anyone who would use this wording, but I think it was in Ring of Fire, which is one of my novellas, where I described the hero's eyes as it was something like his glittering cerulean eyes. And I was like, when I read it out loud, I was like, that is too much. Like, you need to stop. Why did I write that? So, yeah. Uh, I mean, in terms of developmental editing, I think you probably have more experience than I do on that. I'm more like a copy editor.
Ah, okay.
Um, and but Rebecca has developmental edited for me, and I was so impressed by like how professional and like put together she was because I'm just like pure chaos. I'm just going off vibes. And so I felt like our we really like meshed together in that way. So yeah.
So, what is the biggest piece of advice that you have for authors looking to get outside feedback on their work, whether that's a developmental editor, a copy editor, or something else?
Well, I would say definitely get outside feedback. It's I can't even it can't be overstated like how instrumental a beta reader or an editor or a developmental editor is to the process. Like, it's just getting another pair of eyes on it. And if you absolutely can't afford an editor of any kind, or you can't find one or whatever, like at least get one of your friends to look at it and be like, this doesn't make sense, or like, I don't understand this. Because I know for me at least, sometimes I'll just say stuff and and people are like, okay, but what does that mean? So it's very important for me to have those moments pointed out to me. Um, and a lot of times with like the writer versus the editor brain, when I actually look at it when someone points it out, I'm like, oh yeah, that doesn't make any fucking sense.
So, yeah, and like with a developmental editor, the expectation absolutely should be that you're going to get really in-depth feedback and you're going to
Mm,
have very detailed notes on this is exactly why this isn't working. Here's exactly where it isn't working, and here's some ideas for how to improve that. Whereas with the beta readers, it's more likely to be, highlighting a sentence and then just commenting, huh? Or
yeah,
this doesn't make sense, or I don't get it, or I'm confused.
yeah,
So the big difference that I've noticed being on both sides of both kinds of feedback is just the specificity
yeah,
of the beta readers will point out what's wrong, and then I am entirely left to my own devices to figure
yeah.
out how to fix that. Whereas with the developmental editor, that can be a much more actionable suggestion.
Yes. Oh my god. It, I
So,
was I mean, I know you're probably sick of hearing it, but let me just say the developmental edit you did on my book was just so it was just exactly what I needed. And the fact that you followed up with me and like literally held my hand like through my I was like shaking and you were guiding me through the woods like thank you.
honestly, that's one of my favorite parts of doing any developmental edit is I will often do a debriefing call like you and I did,
Hmm.
where it's very much you've had a couple of days to read through my edit letter and my inline comments if you had any. And then we just get on a Zoom call, kind of like
Yeah.
this, and we get to talk through like your reactions to it because as an author, you are going to have those emotional reactions
Yeah.
to that sort of feedback. And it also gives me a chance to make sure that I communicated them correctly to you in a way
Mhm.
that you could understand. I think there was one piece of feedback that I given you that I needed to clarify that, okay, no, no,
Mhm.
this is what I actually meant.
Right.
And I love helping
Yeah.
brainstorm solutions or just hearing your ideas. And I remember you had one that you did end up implementing in the
Yeah.
release version where you said it and I lit up. I was like,
Yeah.
that's perfect. That would do it. That is exactly what's needed. Excellent. I could never have come up with that. So, absolutely one of my favorite parts of the
Yes.
process. I'm so glad it was helpful to you.
Yeah, just bouncing ideas off of someone else is so it's so essential to my process at least. Like I gotta talk it out verbally, and I don't know why, but
Absolutely. And that was one of the aspects that I found lacking when I was getting developmental feedback on my own
mhm.
pieces was I needed that sounding board of, okay, well, if
Yeah.
I did this, would that fix it? If I did that, would that fill like plug the plot hole? But I
Right.
didn't have the opportunity to have that conversation, so definitely try to do that with all of my clients.
Yeah.
So, talking about Daughter of the Moon, which just released, and I'm so excited about it, what was the biggest change that you think you had to make between the first draft and the released version?
I guess in terms of volume, the biggest change was that needed to add a lot to the trials. The riddles at least. There's a point at which she has a trial of cunning, and a lot of that is wordplay and riddles. Because the Fae, you know. Um, and it was it was mostly because I was bored of writing it at that point. I think it was just way too easy for her at first, and I realized that when I went back to reread it because I was like, I actually do have a lot more to say about this. Um, so I think in terms of volume, that was probably the biggest change. In terms of character, well, I mean, you also beta read it and you were like, so who is the love interest? I feel like that was a big one I had to clear up. But that wasn't too hard. I mean, it was there, just hidden under layers of grime. um, I guess the most shocking one to me, the one that I'm most shocked that I made, is that I gave Gaius, the main villain, I gave him a wife. I
Mhm.
didn't expect that from myself, but the more I thought about it, the more I was like, you know what? That's actually perfect. So, and thank you for that, by the way, because that was your idea.
Well, like you mentioned, I did the structural feedback on an earlier
Mhm.
version, and I also read your ARC version, so the same version that's now been published. And I have to say, I love the solutions that you did to all three of those,
Thank
like
you.
the trials and Hyberos as that romantic interest, and making the villain just that little bit more villainous. All
Yeah.
three of those areas, it really felt like you took a rough draft, a rough hewn statue, and just
Mhm.
brought so much more depth and color
Oh,
and vibrancy out of it. It made it so much more immersive and emotional. I loved all of the changes you did around there.
thank
So
you so much.
very well done.
Yeah, I'm never ever not doing a beta read or a developmental edit again. Like, I'm not going back to the dark ages.
Yep, it's a little bit addictive when you see
Yeah,
how much better your story can get with that kind of
seriously. Yeah.
feedback. Yeah, it's impossible to go back. So, was there anything that was suggested to change by me or your beta readers that you loved it too much to change it or to take the advice or anything like that?
I I honestly I don't think so. Because I said this earlier, but I'm very open to criticism. I definitely have that, like, because like I said, I have ADHD, so I have a little bit of the rejection sensitivity. So I need a second to take it in, but once I've taken it in, I usually see the light. So I'm not very precious about getting rid of things or changing things. Like I want it to be a good experience. I want it to be the best it can be. It doesn't matter if I'm changing something that I really like. I mean, it's stuff that I knew, but I was either not ready too lazy or didn't know how to implement that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, so in that case, the confirmation of like you actually should have a follow up with Hyberos at the end. He has his own epilogue. Stuff like that was really helpful. But I can't think of anything that I just did not want to change. I think I was really strong on I wanted Gaius to be this like perfect, like the perfect guy.
Yeah.
Um, but you also helped me a lot with that. Just telling me like, well, you need to change the language around how Maeve sees him.
Yeah.
Everyone else might see him like this beautiful, perfect guy, but she thinks he's a disgusting creep. So obviously she's not going to say like he he looks beautiful, but he's an evil guy. She'd be like, he's stupid and ugly, and I hate him, which is very Maeve anyway. So yeah,
I
so I
love
appreciated
Maeve.
that. Me
And yeah,
too.
that the first person narration, the word choices for
Yeah.
describing stuff can make such a huge difference. But what you were talking about of you're not too precious about it was definitely something that I noticed in how you received the feedback that I gave you
Hmm.
was you were very open to it. And 10 books in, I would expect you to have some degree
Yeah.
of ability to take criticism, to read reviews, whatever the case may
Yeah.
be. But I think that that is something that people don't think about very often is that being able to take feedback, especially when it's given in a constructive and productive manner,
Hmm.
and not feel attacked by it is a
Hmm.
learnable skill, and it is one that is going to
It is.
serve
Yeah.
authors so well for the
Yes.
entire span of their career.
Yeah.
Because I really struggled on my first book getting real feedback because there
Yeah.
were a few things that I was really precious about.
Yeah.
Um,
Your first book is always the hardest
yes,
to because
absolutely.
it's so personal.
Yeah.
It's like it's the first words you ever put down that come out of you. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
But like even 4 books in on my most recent, I noticed that I was getting so much better at
Yeah.
not even having to, take that week to just sit with it and deal with the
Yeah.
feelings and then go start looking at implementing it. The
Yes.
process does get easier and finding the right feedback people can make a huge difference as well.
Yes. Yes. And
So,
luckily my sorry to cut you off, but luckily the my beta readers are all readers of me, obviously. And they are like such special people. Like I feel like they really get me and what I'm trying to do and my voice and just like who I am. And I feel like that really helps as well. Not only for me to know that they like me and to receive that feedback, but for them to give the right kind of feedback to me.
absolutely. I've had a couple of repeat beta readers. I only use like 3 or 4, so it's
Hmm.
not like there's a large pool there. But I have one beta reader, shout out Greg, who I love this man. He gives me exactly the right feedback every single time. He has been a beta reader on all of my books. And yeah, having someone who's a good fit, who likes the work,
Yeah.
who presents their feedback in a really
Hmm.
accessible way,
Yes.
absolutely priceless.
Yes.
So I want to just talk about my impressions of Daughter of the Moon a little bit. I
Okay.
really did thoroughly enjoy it.
Yay.
Just recently finished the arc, and it is delightful. And I particularly love your depictions of that culture, the way of life, and the
Hmm.
way that you handle your world building with the far future that is sort of cycled back around to feeling ancient
Yeah.
is so cool, and I love the way that you've just peppered in so many perfect little details. Like, I lived in Ireland for a little while. My
Uh-huh.
sister speaks Gaelic, like I am somewhat connected into that culture,
Yeah.
and the way that you present that and all of its beauty and glory and intricacies, and then the way you absolutely just demolished my heart with the Roman inspired cultural stuff that comes in and
Yeah.
does what that culture did to the Irish culture and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. There's
Yeah.
there's some big deep emotions in that story, and I think my review that I wrote absolutely tries to pull that to the surface
Uh-huh.
because I feel like if a reader is looking for something that is going to get them in like the primal ancient like ancestor
Yeah.
connected kind of ways, this book is absolutely fantastic for that. And I
Thank
continue
you.
to I love Maeve. She is such a badass, but in like a realistic way. Like
Yeah.
I could meet Maeve and she would feel like a real person.
Thank you.
And your love interest was so unique. I love Hyberos. And the ways that you describe him, like I've seen fawns
Mhm,
or other creatures kind of like him presented as love interests before, but
mhm.
I always feel like they're polished up
Right.
to look more like just a hot guy. And you
Right.
did do that, and I love it so much.
Yeah,
It's
he's a
so
little freak.
unique.
Yeah. I'm
So,
kind of like I'm kind of teetering on that edge of like monster romance. I definitely wouldn't market it to monster romance people because I think they'd be very disappointed in the book. But in terms of how my dudes look, I feel like I kind of play with that a little bit, and
yeah.
I that's just what I find fun. So, but it means so much for me to hear you say, especially the stuff about the Irish culture, because the entire time I wrote it, it was always in the back of my mind that like I have Irish heritage. I mean, look at me. Um, but I'm still an American. I've never been to Ireland. I don't speak Irish. I don't speak Gaelic. Um, so like I really wanted to do my research to make it feel authentic and not like I was just dressing people up and playing Barbies, if that makes sense. I
Yeah.
wanted it to feel like maybe not the real culture that happened in history, since it is far future, but a real culture that could come back. Um, and I also can't say all this without um, also crediting my partner, who is Lakota, Native American, and his insights on I know there are two different types of culture, two different types of indigeneity, but his insights on indigeneity, on um, spirit worship, earth stewardship, ancestor worship, stuff like that was invaluable. Um, and he has taught me so much. And yeah, yeah.
That's
So
delightful. I love
I'm
that.
I'm so glad that it came across the way I wanted it to come across. And I feel like when you said that it drew up a lot of like ancient like ancestral feelings, I feel like I was feeling that too when I wrote it. Because it's not really something I've ever thought about. I'm just American, but putting myself in Maeve's shoes, I'm just like, wow, like a lot of us really did come from this place so long ago. Like, and yeah, it's just
Yeah,
I don't know. It just meant so much to me to put that on the page, I guess.
absolutely. And I also want to say that I'm gonna get the name wrong. What was the name of the pig?
A Conan.
Conan. Conan
Yeah.
is my favorite animal sidekick I have ever read. I love Conan. It's so good. And just like
I'm so
everything he's
glad.
mentioned, he's his own little personality and he is
Yeah.
being very piggish and he is
Yes.
delightful and a just delightful little grace note of humor on top
Yeah.
of what is a can be a very heavy story.
Yeah.
I absolutely adore Conan, and I did from the first time I read the first scene he showed up, and I'm like, I like that pig.
Yeah. He's based heavily on my pit bull Drax, who is he just looks like a big pink pig.
Uh-huh.
Um and a lot of his mannerisms I got from Drax and my other dog as well, Buffy. Um
Cool. Well,
and
I would
I just think like
definitely,
I just feel like every book needs a little sidekick, you know? Just a
and I
little
would
guy.
absolutely point authors to go read your depiction of Conan is like that's how you do animal sidekicks in a cool, interesting, and relevant way. It was
Thank
absolutely
you.
well done.
Thank you so
So
much.
What's up for you next in your author journey? What's on the horizon for this series or for whatever you've got planned next?
Well, I'm hoping to write the next book and get it out by December. We'll see if that happens. Pray for me is all I got to say about that. Um, I'm trying not to go like a year between books. I'm trying to pace myself a little more, give myself a little more runway to then release them a little faster.
Mhm.
That's what I did with Everwinter, and it worked out great. But now I've run out of books so, to publish. So, um, yeah, and then so I'm gonna work on the second book, and then I also have a couple serials up on Kindle Vella that I'm gonna try and get back into. That sort of fell by the wayside while I was working on this. Um, I'm gonna try to get into. I don't have like hardcovers. I'm gonna try to get into that this year, maybe.
Cool.
Um, just looking for different avenues other than books to sort of like introduce people to me, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm not good at like TikTok, and that's where most people like do all that stuff, and I just hate TikTok. So I gotta like figure something out. So yeah, maybe like stickers or merch. I've got some sticker of Conan, actually, a cute
Ah,
little sticker that
excellent.
maybe I'll like put on Etsy or something. Stuff like that. So yeah.
Very cool. How long do you think this series will end up being?
I just 3 books, I think. Yeah. I'm
Very
trying
cool.
to I'm trying to do like for this pen name just trilogies,
Mhm.
maybe like duologies, but nothing. I don't think anything longer than 3 books.
Fair.
Yeah.
So we are a little ways into your launch for Daughter of the Moon now. What sort of stuff do you usually do for your launches? Is there anything particularly fun that you're proud of that you want to share?
Oh man. Uh, well, for the last Everwinter book, I did this whole like what did I call it? It was like a book blast or like a content blast or something like that. I can't remember what I called it, but it was just me posting a bunch of like funny, weird, like miscellaneous stuff that I had made, like memes of my characters and my characters as RPG characters. Like I got like a 16-bit RPG maker on my computer, and I actually like made a little scenes of them. They had little sprites, and that was really cute. I would love to do something like that for Daughter of the Moon. It just depends on like how much time I have.
Fair.
But generally, I will just like blast it all over social media and be like, "Hey guys, look at this thing I did." But this time I have a lot more character art. So
I've been seeing some of it just in
yeah,
your like pre-order phase, and it's so delightful. It's
I totally
absolutely so cute.
I totally overspent on character art this time. But I'm gonna make it
One of
work
the
for me.
dangers of being an author.
Yeah. Yes. So yeah, there's gonna be more of that, more reveals.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Cool. So, lastly, where can people find and connect with you and your wonderful stories and find all of this character art and stuff that we're talking about?
Well, on Instagram, which is where I'm most active, I'm at author Isla Elrick. I also have a website, islaelrick.com. It's pretty rudimentary just because I didn't want to like do something big until I have like a lot of money, until I have any money to hire someone to do a website because I'm not very good at website design. So yeah, so that's my website. It
Mhm.
has all my books. It's just kind of simple. And I have a TikTok. It's Isla Elrick. Um, and I
And I believe I
sometimes
follow
post
you
on
on
there, but
Facebook, so you definitely also have a
yes,
Facebook.
and Facebook. Yes, I have an author page on Facebook, and I think you can also just follow my profile. It's not a personal profile, so I'll friend pretty much anyone, and yeah.
Very cool. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a delight talking to you. I loved Daughter of the Moon and all of the amazing characters you've written in that. I wish you all the best with your delightful story and all of those to follow. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to the Heartbound Editing Podcast. I look forward to bringing you more content to help you make a good story great so it can change lives and change your world. Follow along to hear more or visit my website linked in the description to learn how I can help you and your story to flourish. See you next time.